Alright, hello, and welcome to today's video where we're going to be talking about relationships. So this is probably one of the most requested topics that I get here, which is to talk about relationships and how this self-love path fits into the context of us constantly being in relationship with others. And so the question that I really want to kind of focus in on today is the question of if I'm supposed to learn to be meeting my own needs, if I'm supposed to be like understanding myself and figuring myself out and all of these things, what's the point of relationships? If relationships aren't about meeting each other's needs, why do we have relationships? If we're doing this work and we're becoming independent and we're becoming self-sufficient and we're becoming self-aware, why would we need other people? And I feel like this is a great question, and I hope to bring kind of clarity to this today, because the answer simply is that this isn't a black and white thing, right? That we're not either dependent on other people, and the point of relationships is to have people outside of us meeting our needs for us, or we're completely independent, we're fully self-aware, and meeting my own needs means that I meet all of my own needs by myself, right? And these two kind of ways of thinking, I think, are what block us, obviously, from being able to have healthy relationships where the reality is that we're acknowledging and working within the reality of our interdependence. Okay, and I've been talking about this in other videos, that the kind of extreme swing that's happening, especially in the spirituality and the self-help and the alternative health movements that are happening right now, towards independence, like self-sufficiency, American dream, I am a self-made person, I built this for myself, I am a sovereign individual, and I'm here to be sovereign, and I'm here to take responsibility for myself, and I take responsibility for my own health, and I take responsibility for my own money, and I take my responsibility for my own everything, and I'm just this autonomous, self-responsible, maybe connected to something higher than myself channel for truth, and that's what I am, is taking things way too far. We're not finding the healthy middle ground. We're not finding the reality middle ground. And again, this is the kind of like root base of everything that I'm trying to communicate, is that like none of my teachings are coming from trying to create a reality that doesn't exist. Where I'm always trying to come from is, what is reality? What is the structure? What is the foundation? What is the base for what we're existing in? And how do we use that to help us evolve? How do we connect with reality? And rather than trying to argue with reality to make it something we think it should be in order to give us what we think that we want to figure out what reality is, and then how do we work within it to grow and evolve ourselves. Because that's where progress happens. When we take on what is, we accept what is, and then we work with that to create what we want, right? So that paradox too of the accepting what is doesn't mean that's it, we don't have any control over it and we're not trying to change it in any way. It's we want to accept what is so we can work with it. Yes, when we understand how heat and yeast and sugar and bacteria all work together, we can use that to make several different kinds of baked goods. Right? When we understand how gravity works, we can make airplanes, we can make hang gliders, we can make all of these devices that let us fly. It's the that figuring out of the structure of reality, the foundations of what is, and then saying, okay, now how do I use that to create this thing that I want to create? How do I use that to support evolution, right? And yeah, passive versus active resistance, acceptance, sorry. And so in relationships, we have to take a step back and remember that becoming self-loving, learning how to meet your own needs, doesn't mean that from here on out you're a fully self-sufficient person. That's not what meeting your own needs means. Okay? So for instance, I want to give you just a practical example right off the top so that this makes sense. I did not create this computer. I have literally no idea how this computer works, to be honest with you. If you said, Allie, build me a computer, I could not do it. Right? I have no idea how the internet works. Like the actual nuts and bolts of how the internet works, I am almost completely ignorant to that. And I will never understand how the computer works or how the internet works. Yet, as part of my independence and as part of my meeting my own needs, so meeting my needs for self-expression, meeting my needs for creating a job that worked for me, meeting my needs for wanting to connect with others, all happens through this computer and through the internet that I fully rely on other people to have created and shared with me and then to maintain and improve in order for me to meet my own needs. So I understand what my needs are as far as wanting to make money and wanting to share a specific message because I like doing that and that feels good for me. As far as connecting with others, those are my needs that I understand. And then I'm using technology, I'm using a creation of someone else, I'm using the manpower and the effort of someone else to meet that need. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm not independent. Me being able to meet my own need isn't therefore meaning I now need to become a computer expert and build my own computer and build my own internet and do all of this stuff. I'm fully interdependent with the people who create computers and the people who run the internet. I don't grow my own food. I am interdependent with the farmers who grow the food that I eat. They benefit from my purchasing their stuff. They benefit from getting able to meet their need of this is what they like doing, maybe. This helps the earth. They get their needs met of money and support. And I get food. And so we are meeting each other's needs. Where people get confused, okay, is that I'm not expecting the computer people and the internet people and the farmers to predict my needs, to understand what my needs are when I don't understand what my needs are, and to meet them for me without my understanding, without my request, without my interaction. Okay? So really what we want to think about is that we're going from the childlike way of interacting with other humans, the childlike way of saying this is what a relationship is, to the adult version. So in childhood, I don't understand my own needs. I don't have mental, emotional, or physical capacity to meet my own needs. I am dependent upon my caregivers to intuit, to understand, to know, to predict what I need and to meet those needs without my having to understand them, communicate them, ask, get consent from them to meet the need. There's a completely realistic and a completely logical and a completely necessitated codependency in our early childhood with our caregivers, where we don't have to be responsible for our own needs. We can't be responsible for our own needs. We, in the sense that, again, if it were up to us to say, Mom, I'm hungry, can you breastfeed me when we're 1 month old, we would all die. Because we can't do that. We literally don't have the capacity. Mom has to be able to understand, or dad or caregiver has to be able to understand. Baby is hungry. Feed baby. This cry means this. This squabble means this. This, right? And then as we grow, healthfully, we should be taught more and more and more how to understand what's going on in our own bodies, how to understand what's going on in our own emotions, right? Okay, in an ideal environment, we understand more and more and more, and we become more empowered and more autonomous over time in being able to identify why we're hurting or what we need or what we want or what we're looking for, and how to get those needs met in reality without expecting or needing someone outside of us to predict for us or to know for us how we're going to get those needs met, or like I say, like to, and so this is where we start to get into the healthy versus unhealthy interdependence. A lot of people, like in their romantic relationships or in their friendships, really value this. They understand me. They're able to meet my need without me having to say to them what it is. They meet my need before I express it, right? When someone really knows me, when someone really loves me, they're intuitive about what I need and what I want and what my state is, and are predicting and meeting my needs without my having to ask or even my having to understand. And when we feel like we're not understood by somebody, a lot of the time what we're really experiencing is someone just not predicting for us how we're feeling or what we're needing or what we're wanting, and we're interpreting that as you don't care about me. Because that's what we learned in our childhoods. Right? When mom and dad, when caregivers didn't predict our needs, didn't intuit what was going on with us, didn't figure out our patterns and our ways of being and learn how to adjust the family household to supporting us in our individuality. We were traumatized by that because we couldn't control ourselves, we couldn't change ourselves, we couldn't get rid of our needs. We were not blank slates. We were very much specific beings with specific needs and specific things we needed and wanted and that worked for us and didn't work for us. And when those needs weren't met in our childhoods, in our early childhoods, in our early development, that was early trauma, because we were getting stunted in our growth when we had absolutely no capacity to make it better for ourselves, or to adapt, or to change. And then that's where a lot of us learn to adapt, learn to reject parts of ourselves, learn to act in ways that weren't who we really are, learn to try to change ourselves to the environment so that we were getting our needs met in some sort of backdoor way, so that we were getting accepted and loved in some sort of backdoor other way. Because again, to get our needs met was dependent upon these people. And we got traumatized in that environment that my needs being met happens through someone outside of me, understanding me, loving me, agreeing with me, validating that this need is real. And if they don't, If they don't validate me, if they don't understand me, if they don't validate it, I can't get that need met because I don't have the autonomy to do it. I can't go to someone else. I can't go to another caregiver and be like, the food my parents are feeding me is not helping me. I'm sick. Can you feed me something? We can't go to someone else and be like, I'm an artist and my parents expect me to be an athlete. Can I be an artist here? And then get love and food and security? Because remember, again, it's completely wired into our nervous systems. That love and approval equals getting my needs met. So right from the beginning, we're not in a clear, like, oh, okay, I have this need, mom and dad don't understand it, they're rejecting this part of me, but it's okay because there's a whole big world out there, and when I'm an adult, I'm going to be able to be my real artist self, for instance, and still be able to get food, and still be able to get shelter, and still be able to find even community and these other kind of more emotional needs outside of my parents. So I don't need to change myself, because the chances are mom and dad are still going to feed me. They're still going to clothe me. They're still going to house me, even though they don't like who I am or agree with who I am, or they have all their conditioning around, if I am this way, I'll never survive in the world, and or it's not meeting their needs, or whatever, the unhealthy stuff that's going on there. We all just learn being rejected from these people who have complete control over everything equals I'm going to die. So I got to change myself. And if my needs aren't being empathed, if my needs aren't being understood in that time, that transition between completely disempowered to starting to become empowered, and if we're not empowered, right, if we're not trained, and most of us aren't, how to identify okay, you're crying, can you tell me how you feel? Where do you feel it? Okay, so now we both can identify. That's hunger. So what would you like? So now you can start to understand when you're hungry. Here's the snack counter. And you can start to empower yourself, right? When we're healthfully raised, that would be how it is. So by the time you're 18, by the time you're 19, you feel like you have a pretty concrete understanding of what your needs are. And you've been trained over and over and over again how to identify what that need is, and then how to identify in the reality how to get that need met in some empowered way. So you feel empowered to meet your own needs. And again, that doesn't mean independent. Sometimes meet my own needs is, can I have a cuddle? I'm feeling a little isolated. I'm feeling a little alone. Would you be willing to cuddle with me? And if the person says no, I find someone else. Or I find some other way of self-soothing. Like, we're empowered and we're meeting our own needs when we can make a request. And when someone can consent or not consent, and we have backup ways of getting our needs met. Within the context of a relationship, and this is where it gets a little bit complicated sometimes, within a context of a relationship where we have an agreement with other people. Like, for instance, if you're in a marriage, and your agreement in your marriage, and I'm not saying this is how all marriages are or that this is the right way, it's simply an example. We can have a marriage between two people where we have made an agreement that sexuality is going to be shared between the two of us. You're going to have your sexual needs, I'm going to have my sexual needs. And we have an agreement that if we're not able to meet those needs for each other, the answer isn't go and find it with someone else. In some relationships, you will come to an agreement that, okay, I can't meet your sexual need. Like, you understand what your sexual need is, I understand what my sexual need is, we're not syncing up. We still want to be in this committed relationship. Maybe what works for both of us is you go and get that sexual need met by someone else, but come back to me as your primary partner. Right? We start to say, okay, and then if that doesn't work, we again negotiate. We say, okay, maybe this is a part of me that I need to explore on my own. I made a commitment to this person, and this person is not comfortable with me going and having a sexual experience with someone else. So how do I start to meet this need in another way? How do I feel empowered? And then maybe, like I said, we find out we're not compatible. We can't get our needs met within the container of this relationship. we're not on the same page about how to switch the container of the relationship, and that's something we continue to negotiate. But we don't demand that the other partner either meet our sexual need or allow us to go and do this other thing when we made a commitment that that wasn't what we were going to do. Right? We start to have this idea that we're adults in adult relationships, and it's a constant negotiation. It's a constant reevaluation of what you need, a reevaluation of what they need, a reevaluation of how those two things fit together, and the kind of more like larger container for what the purpose of the relationship is. There's no right or wrong way to meet your own need. We all, and then of course, like I said, we want to always be moving from a place of how do we meet our needs with causing the least amount of harm possible. So again, you could say, well, I know what my sexual needs are, I know my partner can't meet it, so I'm just going to go have sex with somebody else. I'm not going to talk to my partner about it, or I don't really care how my partner feels about it. Right? We can do that, and that is meeting your own need. But then you do kind of have to say, now, in the context of this relationship, is that what I want to do to the relationship? Because this other person is a different person than me, and they have different needs than I do, and different desires and different ideas about what is and isn't wanted, and how can I have respect for this person that I have willingly stepped into a commitment with? And then now we're bumping up against a difference in need. But I value and respect this person, and I value and respect this relationship, and life isn't just about getting my needs met the way that I want them to be met right here, right now. Sometimes we have to say, okay, I've made this commitment is important to me, I value this person, I value the container of this relationship, so maybe I need to expand my view of how I could get this need met. Or how I could say, well, the container of this relationship is more important to me than getting this sexual need fulfilled right now. So how do I expand upon this need? Right? So what I'm saying is, when we're in healthy relationships, we're not independent. We're never going to be independent. We're coming out of the child version of, you're supposed to know what my need is. You're supposed to be able to meet it. I'm not supposed to have to know. And when you don't love me. It's a betrayal. We're in conflict now. This isn't what the relationship is supposed to be. You're supposed to know me. If you really loved me, you would predict my need and you would meet it before I have to ask. And I shouldn't have to ask. Because if you loved me, you'd know. And I'm speaking from personal experience. I totally treated my husband like that. Like, full on. If you loved me, you would have witnessed this about me by now. And it got to the point where I was like, no, you know what? I need to start to understand when I'm upset with him for letting me down in some way. The first thing I started to say is, what did I want? What did I expect here that he didn't do for me? Okay, this thing. This is what I'm upset that he did or didn't do. And then the next thing is, did I verbalize that ever? Did I actually communicate, this is what I expect, or this is what I want, or this would make me feel good, or this speaks love to me? Did I tell him that? Did I make that obvious, or did I expect him to intuit that? And if I didn't, okay, can I do that? Can I say, honey bunny, when I'm in this kind of place, can you not do this? Or even not even necessarily having to say, when I'm in this state, can you not do this thing because it irritates me? To be able to say, okay, I'm in this state. And I can say that every time I'm in that state. Instead of waiting for him to read what kind of place I'm in and how he should behave or shouldn't behave when I'm in that state. I would say, every time I'm in this kind of state, it's up to me to say, whoa, okay, this is where I'm at. This is what I know I can and cannot handle. So, honey, I'm in this state right now. Is there any way you could not play music really loud? I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'll feel better tomorrow. And then we can play music loud and I'll be able to handle it. But today my nervous system is totally overwhelmed. Is that okay with you? And literally, I think you're going to find 9 times out of 10, when you're in relationships with people, and you can come to someone with like a clear, this is how I'm feeling, this is what I would like from you or not like from you. It's probably going to be this time period. Would you be okay with that? 9 times out of 10, they would be, yes, absolutely. I'm more than happy. Because like right when we love each other, when we're in loving relationships, we love meeting each other's needs. It feels good to just know what somebody wants and to like be able to provide that for them. Right? And that's not codependency. Because there's no unspoken expectation, and there's no you have to. Because that's, I think, again, where the codependency happens. Is that like, I'm feeling overwhelmed, so you have to be this way, and if you don't agree, again, now we have this big problem. I'm overwhelmed, Marcus wants to play loud music. Can you just put it in your headphones? Maybe I can go into another room. Can we do it in an hour? Right? If there's, like I say, if there's really that conflict of like, well, no, I'm really dead set on doing this thing, and you're really dead set on not having this, then that's when we say, okay, again, we're adults. You're not my dad. You're not my caregiver. I'm not your dictator. It's not your job to always cater yourself to what I need and what I don't. And then sometimes we have to say, well, then we're just going to have to compromise. It's not that he doesn't love me, that he's in a state where he is needing to play music right now. It's he just can't meet my need right now. So, what can I do to support myself in knowing what my need is? I can leave the room. I can put on my headphones. There's always some thing that we can do. And then, like I say, if it's getting into abuse territory, that's a different thing. Yes? Like when it's really like someone just doesn't care. Like literally you can communicate your needs and what you would like as much as you want, and they're always just like, if it inconveniences me in any kind of way, I'm not going to do it. Then again, you're an adult who then has to say, well, is that the kind of relationship I want to be in? Do I want to be with this person who's kind of deeply unwilling to compromise? Who is really only after their own, this is what I feel like doing in this moment, and if it bothers you, too bad. Again, we have to start to say, we're not children who are trapped in these relationships. Most of the time. It might feel like we are. Like again, like I understand like being in a marriage or being in a friendship or having a boss where it just feels like if I ruin this relationship or if something goes wrong in this relationship or if I lose this relationship, I'm not going to be okay. Like I can't survive without this other person. And I believe most of the time that is trauma. Where but not always, because again, there are situations, absolutely 100%, where we get into abusive relationships where us standing up for ourselves or us trying to leave or us trying to whatever actually puts us in physical danger. And I want to validate that. That is absolutely true, and that's not what I'm talking about right now. Okay? That happens. That is real. And those situations require help from the outside world and are precarious and are delicate, and we need to respect that. Okay, so I fully acknowledge that. Sometimes we are not, there's a difference between a truly abusive, toxic relationship and just a kind of a shitty relationship. Okay? The shitty relationship is where you could leave them. It would be hard, it would be shitty, it would be, you have finances, you have all these things, but they're not going to murder you. They're not going to try to take everything you've got. They don't actually have true power over you. They can get mad at you. They can try to do things. But ultimately you can be okay. Versus, I'm going to try to leave them and they will actually try to kill me, or they will actually try to like ruin my life forever. Those are two different situations. So learning how to identify the difference between abuse, trauma, really, really unhealthy relationship where you are in harm's way, and dealing with that in that specific way, versus we're just in a shitty relationship, we're just codependent. Okay? So again, I don't want to whitewash this and say that it's all the same thing, because it isn't. And this real abuse relationship, where the other person is in a situation, the power dynamic is such that they do have true power over you, in the sense of they are endangering your life. That is something I can't speak to right now, in the sense of like I don't have the standing, and that's not my lane to give a prescription for that. But what I can say is I can validate that, and that's real. And if that is a situation you're actually in, don't listen to what I'm saying about this empower yourself, you're an adult, you can just do whatever you want. Don't listen to that, because that's not your situation. And first things first is it's not your fault. It's not your fault. We got into the relationship, something happened, probably conditioning, programming. It's not your fault. You are not to blame, and you do not deserve it. You do not deserve it on any level. It is not your fault. You are not to blame, and you do not deserve it. And you deserve the help and the support that you need to slowly get yourself out of that situation. So I can say all those things, and I want to say all those things. And it's precarious, and it's hard, and I feel for you, and I see you. Okay, so if you're in that situation, that's a real thing, and that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is we're two adults, and we got into a codependent relationship because we don't really understand ourselves, and we don't really understand each other. We don't understand what needs are. We don't understand. And I would say like that's more like what my husband and I have had. It wasn't abusive. There was no power dynamic. Neither of us were ever in danger in our fights and in our disagreements. We just were codependent. And learning how to be interdependent with each other first did require both of us growing into independence. We had to go through a phase of like, okay, dude, it's not my job. I've been way overtaking responsibility. You've been way undertaking responsibility. I'm going to pull back on predicting your needs and predicting what you want. And when you're unhappy and when you're unsettled in your life, making it my problem and my fault, and I'm going to try and fix it for you. And when I have needs, I need to either get them met completely on my own, or I have this big panic freak out because you didn't intuit it for me, and that means you don't love me, and that means we're not compatible, and you don't care about me, and blah, blah, blah. It started to be like, no, I need to focus on myself and what I need and get to know myself. You need to focus on yourself, empowering yourself. When you're unhappy, when you're unsatisfied, when you're not good with life, you don't get to blame me anymore. You're an adult. What do you want? What do you want? What would make you feel better? You figure that out. And then when you know what that is, you made a commitment to me. So you can't just go and do whatever you want. That ship sailed. You're not a single person, right? So learning how to be interdependent in relationships means that we say we made a contractual agreement. I'm not a single person necessarily. In a friendship, in a romantic relationship, in a work relationship, we have to acknowledge that we've made commitments to these other people. So starting to understand what I want, what I need, what my desires are, is the first part. And then how does that fit in to the container of this relationship that I have committed to? where I consider the other person and their needs and their boundaries and their capacities, which then looks like asking consent. Would you be willing to meet this need that I have in this way for me? And if not, this is how I intend to go get it met in some other way. Is that okay within the container of our relationship? And if not, why not? And what can we work out together? Or does the container of this relationship need to be released? That's what adult relationships look like. That's what interdependence is. We're no longer asking the other party to predict and understand and validate and know what we need at all times. And it's not to say that that's not going to happen, right? Because of course, like my husband and I have been together for 10 years. We can intuit each other at this point. He doesn't always have to ask me. And some things are things that I've asked for once or twice, things that he's asked for once or twice, and he doesn't have to keep asking, and I don't have to keep asking. I just kind of know when he's in this place, when I'm in this place, she would prefer if I just kind of did this, and I said that I was fine with that. So I'm just going to do it. She's not going to have to ask. And then there are other times, again, where I'm feeling so let down by him, and then I'm like, wait a minute, did I ask? Did I even know what I wanted here? Or am I just, I had this complete story in my head of like, this is how it's supposed to be, and this is what he's supposed to do, and I'm completely entitled to that, and if he doesn't do it, he doesn't love me. Right? And I've discovered in myself, I've had so many stories of like, this is what it would look like if he loved me, that I wasn't even like consciously aware of. So then when he was just going on being himself, I'm interpreting it as like, oh my God, he doesn't love me. And to him, he's like, what are you talking about? If you would just ask me, can I do this for you? I would be happy to do that for you. But you never asked. Or I didn't know that that's how you were feeling. You didn't tell me. Because I also have learned that I'm really good at like pretending I'm fine when I'm not. And then I blow up. And then he's like, well, I didn't know all that stuff was going on in your head. And then we've had that conversation the other way, right? Where he gets to the point where he's frustrated now. And I'm like, okay, well, hold on. You had this whole day in your head and in your computer and all these things that I have no idea about. You didn't tell me. You're a separate person from me. We're having two completely different experiences. Even though we both work from home, we're here with each other all day. I don't really know what his day is like. He doesn't really know what my day is like until we tell each other. So if I had a shitty day, he doesn't know that just because he was here. And then he shouldn't have to predict what I'm going to need and what I'm going to want and all these things. You see what I'm saying? Without me saying, oh, I had a shitty day. I'm not really in the mood today for the thing we usually do because blah, 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 blah. And like I say, most of the time when we're in relationship with each other, all we really want is to know what the other person is thinking and feeling, and to know what we can do or not do to be of some assistance. And when that's clearly communicated to us, that's very empowering. And then again, with the caveat that no one ever has to meet your need. And that you don't have to meet someone else's need, right? Like just because you can clearly communicate what you need to someone, or just because someone can clearly communicate to you what they want or they need, doesn't then mean you're in a contract that you now have to meet that need for them. You're not their caregiver, right? The only contract between humans where it's like you are responsible for meeting that other person's need is caregiver and child. You are responsible for your child. If you are a caregiver, you are absolutely responsible for that child because they can't meet their need without you. Once it starts to be adult and adult, we're not responsible for each other. And so again, we walk that line of I care about you. I'm fully willing to sometimes go out of my way or to make myself uncomfortable or to do something I don't really want to do for you And then this is where, again, that interdependence comes in, where if we're going to do that, if we're going to do something for someone else that we don't necessarily want to do, or that doesn't necessarily feel good to us, or isn't what we would do if we were single, we have to take responsibility for ourselves and say, I am agreeing to do this. So I'm not going to hold resentment and bring it back in their face later when I'm upset with them. Well, I did this thing for you. Yeah, well, I didn't really want to do that thing and you made me do it. See, that's dangerous territory. It's part of taking responsibility for yourself is if you're going to do something for somebody, even again, if you're going to intuit someone's needs and meet them without them asking, you got to start to understand you're choosing to do that. You may say, well, I don't want to get yelled at. I don't want to have a shitty... Yeah, of course, all of my videos are always stored in IGTV. Every one of them gets saved. You don't have to ask that question, okay? I promise. Every single time, this always gets saved. And then eventually it gets posted to YouTube, okay? And eventually, we start to understand that, like, of course, again, some of us are in kind of shitty relationships where the other person is going to get mad at us if we don't meet their unconscious need. I've done it to Marcus over and over again. I blamed him and got mad at him and gaslit him for not meeting needs that I had never communicated. Or for saying, like, you owe me because we're in this relationship. And that was not fair because he's a separate person from me. And there should always be, in a really, truly healthy, interdependent relationship, consent. I'm going to meet this need for you because I love you and I can tell that it would just be great for you, or you've asked me and that's something I'm willing to do and I'm going to do it. And I'm doing that for this, right? And then we have to start to say, sometimes, like I say, we have these relationships where the other person is not conscious of their needs, is not conscious of their wants, and they do project onto you, right? That they are still operating as though you are their caregiver. And when you don't meet their need, and when you don't predict, and when you don't, you do get yelled at. You do get gaslit. You do get. And that's when you have to start to stand up for yourself when you're not in this abusive kind of relationship where if you start to do that, they're going to hit you or they're going to actually put you in harm's way. Again, completely separate situation. When you take responsibility for yourself, you start to say, I see that you're upset. I can understand why you're upset, but you didn't ask me and I didn't consent. This isn't actually my job. I'm not your caregiver. I'm your friend. I'm your spouse. I'm your partner. I'm your employee. I'm your boss. It's not my job to predict your need. It's not my job to meet your needs. I'm an adult and I get to consent. And if I don't consent, you don't get to get mad at me for not doing it. We can then, again, renegotiate what's going on in our relationship and the dynamic, and so that we can feel like we're getting each other's needs met. But that's what kind of sovereignty within a relationship is that you understand the commitment you've made to this person. So again, you're not single. You don't get to just do whatever you want. Unless you want to do that and you're willing to accept the consequences of however your partner or the person you're interacting with reacts to that. Right? And this is this is what reality is. Sometimes the other person is unreasonable. And so do we want to just keep doing the codependent thing because it's less effort? Or do we want to try to change the relationship? Or do we want to leave the relationship? When we're in just like this shitty relationship and there's no physical danger, that option is available. So again, it's really like not sexy. And true love isn't about, especially in romantic relationships, but in friendships too, you get me. And I don't have to say, and you just know. That's nice. and it will happen. But that's not what love is. Like, real love is, I'm an autonomous individual, you're an autonomous individual, and we're co-creating together. So we're constantly learning things about ourselves and things about each other and things about how reality works and what we need and what works and what doesn't work, and we're in this constant dance of growing together, which sometimes means I do things for you. Sometimes means you do things for me. Sometimes means we don't do things for each other, and we learn how to get those needs met independent of each other within the context of the relationship, right? Where I am balancing these two things. Of, I made a commitment to you. This is our contract. This is the agreement we have between each other. So I'm balancing getting my needs met within that agreement that I willfully made as an adult. And if I don't want to keep up that agreement, I am willing to sacrifice what's going to be sacrificed to break that agreement, with no expectation that the other person has to be okay with it. They have to be okay with it. They have to meet my need because they're my spouse. No, they don't. Just like you don't have to meet your spouse's need, your friend's need, your boss's need. And then we weigh the consequences. Okay, so now someone says, how do you forgive yourself after gaslighting someone by accident? We're all going to do it. We're all going to do it forever. I think the main thing is, again, becoming aware of like what you did, what you wanted, what you needed. This is what my actual need was. This is what I expected. This is what I was going through. This is where I was at. And then having that open and honest conversation with that person. Hey, I recognize I gaslit you there. I totally didn't communicate with you. I didn't even know what I wanted or needed. Not because I'm a shitty person. Not because I wanted to hurt you. I didn't want to gaslight you. I didn't, right? We all grew up not knowing how to have healthy, interdependent relationships. So we can issue a sincere apology. This is what I did. I totally see it. I'm so sorry. Is there anything you need for me to feel like I get it and I see you and I'm sorry? And here's how I'm going to change in the future. And the biggest thing is that we don't beat ourselves up. Because again, I know we all think if I don't feel guilty about this, if I don't beat myself up about this, if I don't shame myself about this, I'm going to do it again. No. Actually, the more compassion you have for yourself, the more you're going to see why you did it, and the more you're going to be able to do something different. This again is the paradox of self-love. The more you have compassion for yourself and what you are and what you've done, the more able you are going to be to meet your needs in healthier ways. We get trapped in our doing the same thing over and over and over again, the more we shame ourselves. Because again, that shame, that rejection, triggers our nervous system that we're not going to get our needs met, and then we go into fight or flight, and then we just repeat patterns. We can't see the bigger picture. We can't understand what we did and why we did it, and we can't change. As much as we become aware of it, our nervous systems won't let us do something different. So the more compassion you have for yourself, the more you're actually going to be able to do something different. Because I've been there. I've gaslit Marcus 100 million times. And first starting with, okay, I didn't do that on purpose. I wasn't trying to gaslight him. I didn't want to hurt his feelings. I wasn't trying to sabotage our relationship. That's what I knew. I grew up codependent. So did he. We all did. Now I know something different. I can apologize. I can say in the future I will ask. I understand what I needed now. I get it. I'm so sorry. Is there anything you need from me that I can provide? And then moving forward, I'm going to be more aware of what I needed, what I wanted, and consent. Right? This is how we do it. It's just, we're all humans and we're all going to fumble our way through this. We're all going to fumble our way through this. And so this, again, is not about trying to attain some sort of perfection. None of us are ever going to be perfect at this. Ever. We're all going to gaslight each other sometimes. We're all going to sometimes expect things that we don't know that we want and that we need, and we're not going to be aware of our needs, and we're going to project. We're all going to feel like if I do what I actually want to do or don't do what they want me to do, they're going to leave me and I can't handle that. When in reality, we could be okay. Or the conversation needs to be had. or someone tells us that we're expecting too much of them, and we don't know how to like be an adult about that. It's gonna happen. There are going to be times where we're in a container of a relationship, and then we discover we need something, and the other person can't meet it or doesn't want to meet it, and then we have to renegotiate the container of the relationship. Or we say, nope, the relationship container is worth it to me. So what do I need to do for myself? And then the last thing I really want to say is, again, when we verbally or non-verbally consent to meeting someone else's need, even if it's in the most codependent, terrible way, we have to be able to take responsibility for ourselves that we did that and not blame the other person or use it as ammo later. And if your partners are doing that to you, that's a conversation you can say. You can say, look, you're an adult. Yeah, maybe I yell at you and I get mad at you when you don't meet my unconscious need. But at the end of the day, you're an adult. And do you want to keep being in a relationship with me? Are you okay with me being this way? And if not, what are you going to do for yourself? And we do this with ourselves too, right? If this person is continually asking me to unconsciously meet their need, and I'm consenting to doing that because I don't want to have the yelling match. Again, I'm not in physical danger. They're not going to take the children. I'm not making this sacrifice because I kind of have to, which is a different situation. I'm making the sacrifice because I don't want to be uncomfortable, and I don't want to change things, and I don't want to risk rejection, and I don't want to risk losing this person. We kind of have to say, I'm making that choice. I'm not being forced. And so if I agree to meet their need even though I don't want to, I don't get to use that as ammo later. That's not fair. If someone asks me for something and I don't want to do it and I do it anyways, and then I throw it back in their face later, that's not nice. That's not respect. We need to say, no, I was an adult who chose to do that. You didn't have a gun to my head. I didn't want to do it. I did it for you. And then we take responsibility that we chose that. And we don't get to harbor resentment about it. Because a lot of times, that is so painful in relationships. Where someone does something for us, and then they get mad at us later, and we're like, whoa, right? Like, you didn't have to do that. I didn't have a gun to your head. You met my need, and now you're telling me I owe you something because you did that. It can't be a bargaining tool. And if someone is using that on you, like it's a bargaining tool, every time they meet your need, it's a bargaining tool. You owe them now. It's a power dynamic. That's not healthy. That's not healthy love in any kind of relationship. We want to say, okay, now, again, that now as an adult, I need to take responsibility and be like, this isn't the kind of relationship I want to be in. I don't want getting my need met by this person to be collateral. I don't want to be in a relationship like that. So again, that's why I say this is like, generally it's unsexy. It's just nuts and bolts stuff. What are my needs? What are you willing to do? What's the container of our relationship? What am I willing to do? How can we navigate this together? Boss, partner, spouse, friend, family member. Understanding that everyone else is an independent adult who's not there to meet your needs. And then understanding that, again, we're never going to be fully independent. We're always going to be a community. And interdependence, where your strengths are something I use and my strengths are something you use, and we work together with our strengths. People build computers so that I can do this. We are playing off our strengths. Because of someone else's strength, I then get to do my strength. So I don't consider myself a sovereign individual. I am in no way sovereign. I am more and more understanding what I want and what I need, and working within the framework of other human beings and their boundaries and what they need, and having the earth be part of it, and for how we can all get our needs met together. How we can all, as adults, get our needs met together. It's not just about me. It's not just about them. It's both. We're both. It's not black and white. It's how do we work with the reality of each other? How do we work with the reality of your strengths and your weaknesses and my strengths and my weaknesses so that we can evolve together? It's community. That's actually the enlightened way. I am self-aware. I know where my strengths are. I know where my weaknesses are. And now I'm looking for the people to consent to help me with my weaknesses, and I'm looking to consent to help people with their weaknesses. And then there are many things that are just me and between me and me. It's not up to anyone to predict my needs. It's not up to anyone to understand my needs. And as long as people aren't actively endangering my life to stop me from getting my needs met, I'm a free adult who can choose to change the situation. And then if I'm in that actual situation where I'm physically unsafe, that's a different situation. That exists. And that's the power dynamics that need to be shifted. And us as community members, I think, need to start to be more involved in our communities and in our friends' lives and in our neighbors' lives so that that stuff happens less and less, right? Like less and less centralization of power, just in every kind of way. Because there's always going to be the people who have the capacity to overpower others. And the more power these people have, the more imbalanced society becomes. So the more active we are in our communities, where people are less and less dependent on singular people, and we're more and more community focused, the less people can accumulate that power. Because again, like, right, a truly abusive relationship requires isolation. That's like the hallmark of an abusive relationship is there's that subtle and slow over time isolation from other people, so that that person has more and more and more and more power. And so that's why I say we need to focus community. We need to have friends. We need to have neighbors. We need to have more than one person, two people, one thing in our lives that we're interacting with to get our needs met. So I hope that that helps. So relationships are about learning about yourself and what you need and what other people need and what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do, and building containers and having adult consent and building community so that there's less centralization of power. So that's the micro and the macro. And then there's the beautiful, relationships stop being about need meeting, and they start being about what can we create together, and just getting to know another person and being on their journey, right? Like the more Marcus and I grow together and all this stuff, it's more and more and more. I'm just curious to learn about him and to go on his journey with him and to figure out who and what he is and watch him grow as a human being and create stuff with him. It's not so much like, are you going to meet my needs today? Are you going to meet my needs today? Am I meeting your needs today? And how is that helping it? It evolves into this, okay, well, I'm feeling more and more empowered that even without you, I could get my needs met. So I'm choosing to be in this relationship with you because I like you. And I want to get to know you, and I want to create with you, and I want to grow with you. And we're no longer looking for that secure attachment of the parent who is going to meet our own needs. We become our own secure attachment. I'm always going to be here with you, and that's where the self-love comes in. I'm going to be here with you. I'm going to help you figure this out. We're going to do this. I'm always going to listen to you. I'm always going to figure out what you need, and we're going to meet that within the context of what reality is. And I'm always going to be looking to empower myself. and renegotiate my containers and all of these things. What am I really willing to do? What am I willing to sacrifice within real reality instead of waiting for the reality to be this perfect thing that meets my needs? It's not ever going to be that. So where do the compromises need to be made? Where do not the compromises? All that. And then we say, the more empowered you feel, the more your relationships become about getting to know someone else and growing with them, and expanding with them, and being curious about them, and having them be curious about you, and what can we, again, what's our dynamic, and what can we create together, and what can we explore together, and what do we want to do together. It's not just, are you meeting my need, am I meeting your need, okay, we're good. It's more than that. We start to be involved in our own evolution, and then we take people along for the ride, and we go along for the ride, and we alchemize our growth together. And that's when relationships really become great. It's like, you're not here to just meet my need, and I'm not here to just meet your need. We both know what we want. We both know what we need. We're on our paths. And how can we co-create those paths together to amplify each other? Because again, we're always going to amplify each other. I'm never going to be the fullness of myself all by myself. I'm the fullest of myself because of so many other things that have contributed to me being myself. And I'm so grateful for other people's journeys intersecting with mine. So people become sources of interest and evolution and growth, and how can I support you, and how can you support me, and like, what do we want to create together? All right? So that's the point of relationships in self-love. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the comments, and I'll see you next week for another video. All right? Mwah.